It started with a dare. Isn't that how these stories always begin? We were kids bored and looking for trouble, and the old well on the edge of town seemed like the perfect challenge. Make a wish, they said. If it whispers back, your wish will come true. We all laughed, of course, except for me, because deep down I wanted to believe. And that's how I ended up standing alone on the edge of the well, clutching a coin in my trembling hand. I should have walked away, but instead, I whispered my wish into the darkness. The well was ancient, its bricks crumbling and overgrown with moss. It sat at the edge of the woods where the trees seemed to lean in, their twisted branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. Even in daylight, it felt like stepping into another world, a colder, darker one. The townspeople called it the Whispering Well. Some said it was cursed, others claimed it was sacred, but everyone agreed on one thing. The well was old, older than the town, older than the woods, maybe even older than time itself. I leaned over the edge, my breath fogging in the cold air that rose from the depths. The well seemed impossibly deep, a yawning void that swallowed light and sound. I couldn't see the bottom, only darkness. I wish my dad would come back. I whispered. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the well's endless void. My dad had been gone for almost a year, taken by a car accident that shattered our family. I missed him more than words could express. I dropped the coin. It clinked against the stones as it fell, the sound growing fainter until it disappeared altogether. And then I heard it. A whisper. Faint, almost imperceptible. Your wish is granted. At first it seemed like a miracle. That night as I lay in bed, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, familiar. My heart raced as I bolted upright, my breath caught in my throat. Dad? I called out, my voice trembling in anticipation. The door creaked open, and there he was, my dad. He looked exactly as I remembered him. Same warm smile, same kind eyes. He sat on the edge of my bed and ruffled my hair, just like he used to. But something felt off. His skin was cold, his movements stiff, and his eyes, though they looked like his, held a shadow that hadn't been there before. Everything's going to be okay now, he said, his voice low and even. We're together again. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. My dad was always there, always watching. He didn't eat, didn't sleep. His smile never faltered, but it felt wrong. Too wide, too forced. And then there were the whispers. They started at night, faint and distant, like a breeze carrying voices through my window. Come back to us, they said. You don't belong here. I thought I was losing my mind. My mom, still grieving, didn't notice anything strange. She was just happy to see me smile again. But I wasn't smiling. Not really. I started to avoid my dad, spending hours in the woods near the well, trying to understand what I'd done. That's when I noticed it. The air around the well had changed. It felt heavier, colder, and the whispers, they were louder now, echoing up from the depths, even when I wasn't near it. One day I leaned over the edge, desperate for answers. "What do you want from me?" I shouted. The response was immediate and chilling. Your soul, in exchange for his." I stumbled back, my heart racing. That's when I saw it. My reflection in the water at the bottom of the well. It wasn't mine. It was twisted, hollow-eyed, its mouth open in a silent scream. That night my dad came back to my room again. "You look tired," he said, his voice calm and soothing. "Why don't you rest? Everything will be better in the morning." But his shadow stretched across the room, darker and larger than it should have been. And his smile, it split his face in two, revealing rows of jagged teeth. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get away. My feet carried me back to the well, the whispers growing louder with every step. "You can't run," they said. "It's already done." I peered into the darkness, and that's when I saw them. The souls. Hundreds of them, their faces twisted in agony, their hands reaching for me. And among them was my own. The next thing I knew, I was falling. The well swallowed me whole, its walls closing in as the whispers turned to screams. Now I'm here, trapped at the bottom of the well, my soul bound to its darkness. The creature, the one that granted my wish, it feeds on us, uses us to lure others. So if you ever find yourself near an old well, and you hear it whispering your deepest desires, don't listen. Don't make a wish. Because the moment you do, it's already too late. I should know. I'm the one whispering now. When I found the tickets, I thought they were just a strange piece of family history. Something my grandmother had forgotten to mention. 2 crisp, pristine tickets to the midnight carnival, dated 50 years ago. But as I held them, a strange chill ran through me. The ink seemed to glimmer, shifting in the dim light of the attic, as though the tickets were alive. I should have ignored them, thrown them away, but instead, I let curiosity get the better of me. That's how Lucy and I ended up in a place no one ever leaves. The carnival wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. It appeared out of nowhere in the outskirts of town, in an empty field where the grass grew too tall and the air always seemed heavy. When we arrived, the entrance archway glowed faintly, like it was lit from within, though there were no visible bulbs. The man at the gate, if you could call him a man, was unnervingly tall and thin. His shadow stretched unnaturally long across the ground. His top hat was frayed, his coat patched with fabrics that shimmered like stars, and his smile, it was wrong. Too wide, too toothy, like it had been carved into his face. "Welcome to the Midnight Carnival," he said, bowing low. "You're just in time for the grand performance." Lucy and I exchanged a nervous laugh, assuming he was part of the show. When he extended a gloved hand, I hesitated. His fingers seemed to twitch, bending in ways they shouldn't. Still, we handed them the tickets. The moment he touched them, they vanished into a puff of smoke, leaving behind the faint scent of something sweet and sickly. The carnival pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly life. The lights above the rides flickered erratically, casting strange shadows that danced along the ground. The air was thick with the mingling scents of burnt sugar, hot grease, and something metallic, like blood. We passed a carousel, its painted horses frozen in mid-scream, their mouths wide as if caught in some eternal agony. A clown waved at us from a booth, his makeup cracked and his eyes glassy. He wasn't blinking. "Creepy but cool," Lucy said, snapping a picture on her phone. When she checked the screen, her brow furrowed. The photo was blank. The performers were the strangest of all. An acrobat dangled from a trapeze high above. Her body limped like a rag doll until she suddenly sprang to life, twisting unnaturally in the air. A fire eater swallowed flames that turned black as they disappeared into his throat, and a juggler tossed glowing orbs that seemed to whisper as they spun. "Step right up," called a barker at a nearby booth. "Win a prize, if you dare." Lucy said, "Let's try it," as she grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the booth. The booth was lined with jars, each containing a strange, pulsing light. "Knock down all the bottles and one of these beauties is yours," the barker said. Lucy threw the ball, knocking over the bottles with ease. The light in the jar she won flared brightly, casting a shadow across her face that made her look different. For a moment, I swore her eyes glowed. As the night wore on, the carnival became darker, quieter. The cheerful music from the rides slowed, and the notes bending unnaturally, like a record being played backwards. I'd finally had enough, and I whispered to Lucy, telling her I think we should go. Lucy rolled her eyes, telling me I'm being dramatic. It's just a part of the vibe. But it wasn't just the vibe. The shadows had grown longer, reaching for us like fingers. Whispers floated through the air, just out of earshot, their words slurred but insistent. At one booth I caught a glimpse of something horrifying, a face staring back at me from a mirror. My face, but it wasn't me. The reflection was twisted, hollowed eyes, its mouth moving silently as though trying to scream. At midnight, the bell rang, loud and deafening. The air vibrated with its toll, and a hush fell over the carnival. All paths seemed to lead to the central tent, its fabric shimmering like liquid silver under the moonlight. Inside, the ringmaster stood beneath a single spotlight. His grin was sharper now, his eyes glowing faintly. "Welcome to the grand finale," he announced. "A performance like no other. A chance to become part of something eternal." Around us, mirrors began to rise from the ground, encircling the audience. In each mirror I saw the performers, the jugglers, the fire eater, the acrobat. But their faces were familiar. It was the faces of the carnival's previous guests, trapped behind the glass. Their mouths moved silently, their eyes pleading. I reached for Lucy, but she was staring into one of the mirrors, her face already fading into its surface. I screamed her name, grabbing her arm. She turned to me, her eyes hollow. She told me to stay. She told me it was my turn now. But her voice didn't sound like her anymore. It sounded like a bunch of layered whispers, all mixed into one. I tried to run, but the ground beneath me twisted and shifted, pulling me back toward the mirrors. The last thing I saw was my reflection, distorted, hollow, glowing faintly like the others. My voice joined the whispers as my body melted into the glass. They say the carnival returns every 50 years, and when it does, it needs new performers. If you find tickets to the midnight carnival, don't go. Burn them, bury them, do whatever it takes to stay away. Because now I'm here, trapped, watching, waiting. And when the carnival returns, maybe you'll see my face smiling back at you from the other side of the mirror. Have you ever hiked a trail so remote it felt like you were walking on the edge of the world? A place so untouched it seemed like time had forgotten it? That's where we were, deep in the wilderness of Blackthorn Ridge, a place with no cell signal, no landmarks, and, as we'd soon learn, no escape. The locals warned us about it, called it the Vanishing Trail. We laughed it off as superstition. A group of experienced hikers armed with GPS trackers, maps, and enough gear to camp for a week. We thought we had nothing to fear. We were wrong. The trail started innocently enough. The air was crisp, the scent of pine thick in the breeze. Birds chirped somewhere above, and the crunch of leaves underfoot was the only sound. It was perfect, until it wasn't. It began subtly. Midway through the first day, someone threw a comment out saying, "Wasn't Kelly just ahead of us?" We all stopped to look around, but no sign of her. Kelly had been with us at the trailhead, laughing about her overloaded pack, but now there was no sign of her. "She probably went on ahead," someone said. But when we reached our first waypoint, she wasn't there. Her gear wasn't there. Even her name seemed to slip from our conversation like sand through a sieve. By nightfall, the mood had shifted. We called out for her, but our voices felt swallowed by the trees. Worse, her name didn't seem to stick. Marcus kept saying the missing girl instead of Kelly. By morning, I found myself struggling to remember her face. That was the first clue. The second disappearance hit harder. Jen, our navigator, stopped in her tracks as we crossed a shallow creek. "Wait," she said, staring at the GPS. "This isn't right." What do you mean?" I asked, peering over her shoulder. "The map's changed," she whispered, her voice trembling. She showed us the screen. Our planned trail had been replaced by a featureless expanse, as if the route had been erased. An hour later, Jen was gone. One moment she was at the back of the group, joking about blisters. The next, she wasn't there. No scream, no struggle. Just gone. Her pack lay abandoned on the trail. Inside, her map was blank. Just empty paper. Her picture on my phone? It was gone too. The whispers started that night. Faint, just outside the firelight. A voice that sounded like Jen's, then Kelly's. "Come back," they said. "Stay with us." No one slept. The following morning, Marcus was frantic. "We're being hunted," he hissed. His eyes darted to the trees as though something was watching us. "This thing, it's erasing them. It's like they never existed." It wasn't just the people disappearing. Their footsteps vanished. Their voices faded from memory. Even their scent was gone, leaving the forest disturbingly empty. By the third day, there was only 3 of us left. Marcus, Liz, and myself. And we weren't alone. The forest had grown quieter. Shadows moved where no light should fall. A creeping, inhuman shape seemed to ripple through the trees. its edges dissolving into the air like smoke. Liz screamed when she spotted it first. A dark, shifting void, more absence than presence. It darted between trees, and then sank into the ground, merging seamlessly with the dirt. We ran. Our supplies were abandoned. Our maps were useless. Liz tripped over a root, and when I turned to help her up, she was gone. No trace. Not even her scream lingered in the air. By the time Marcus and I reached the edge of the forest, I could feel it closing in. I stopped by a puddle to catch my breath, only to see something that froze me to my core. My reflection wasn't there. "Marcus," I whispered, but when I turned, he was staring blankly ahead, his eyes unfocused. He didn't respond when I shook him. Slowly, his features began to blur like ink bleeding into water. Then, in a blink, he was gone. I was alone. I don't remember how I made it back. The next thing I knew, I was standing in the parking lot, staring at my empty car. My phone had no photos, no text from the group. Even the trailhead sign was blank, as though the forest didn't want to be found. I'm writing this now to warn you. If you ever hear about Blackthorn Ridge, stay away. It doesn't just take you, it erases you. And as I type this, my hands are fading. The keys beneath my fingers vanishing. I glance at my reflection in the window. It's almost gone. You won't remember me. But if you ever feel like someone is missing, like a hole has been carved into your memory, run. It's coming for you too. Because once you step into the vanishing trail, it's already too late.